Hello there. I'm just doing this as a cheeky overview of how I went about creating the CAD models and the real life 3D printed models for my Hunt Showdown items, the Quad Derringer and the Poison Bomb model. I've got a few of the photos up now on my Behance profile. As you can see, it's a Derringer from the game and the Poison Bomb. Both 3D printed with a process called SLS. This is mostly an industrial process. There are a few desktop machines becoming available, but for reference, this is what the machine looks like that these were made on. It's a bit of a beast. I'd describe it as almost being van sized. So not exactly your household little FDM machine, but saying that, some people have created these designs, particularly the Derringer, on their home FDM and I think a resin machine. If I look at this on my Thingiverse profile, yeah. So this looks like I'd say that's probably FDM, looking at the layer lines and the little like jankiness here and there. It's a bit FDM-y. PLA, yeah, that'll be probably FDM. And also this guy here has made a model in resin. Very, very crisp looking model actually. I'm a big fan of it. Of course, that last one we looked at, they painted it up as one of the skins from the game, where I've gone for the more basic option. There's some real good work here from some guys who have printed it. I mean, the finishing on this looks better than my own, I'd say. But anyway, yeah, let's get into how it was created. You're gonna have to forgive me. I currently run SolidWorks on a remote desktop. Don't ask why. You probably don't want to know. It's long and very boring explanation. But in SolidWorks, you can go back and forward in time on the feature tree by dragging this back, and I can go all the way back to the start and show you guys how I created this model from the start. I'm not going to go into ultra level of detail. I'm just going to like brush over the process here. So I started by importing a side profile screenshot from the game, and that was scaled based on my knowledge that Crytek modelled this gun based on the Sharp's Bulldog pistol from the 1800s, and that pistol fires 8mm bullets. So I scaled this image such that the barrel would be about, well, it says 9.10 there. I'm not entirely sure why I did 9.10, but essentially I scaled it based on the diameter of the barrel size, based on the knowledge of the size of the rounds the real gun fired. And having a sketch picture allows you to trace a lot of the profile in SolidWorks. And SolidWorks obviously isn't the ideal program for this kind of modelling, but it's damn good at it if you know what you're doing. So this is sort of a guide sketch, I'd call it, just to like get a profile of the side profile of the gun. And you can see, you can sort of like follow the profile roughly. It doesn't have to be exact, but close enough that when it's made, you look at it and you know exactly what it's meant to be and it doesn't look strange. which is, I think, exactly what I achieved with this model, which is why so many people love it. I mean, even Crytek have reposted this on their community page. Anyway, yeah. So after doing various guides on sketches, I started by let's just hide this image. I'd have started by creating some surfaces. And if you break that down, you can see the sketches that we used to create these surfaces. Again, I'm not going into too much detail, but if you sort of drag over this, you see I'm building up one surface at a time, and then you do a boundary surface between them, and that gets you that shape, and a plane here and a plane there. Surface extrudes, building it up, knitting things together. This is a bit messy, to be honest. I'd normally like to keep things more organised than this, but it is a bit messy, to be completely honest. But as you can see, through building up surface at a time, we can create some quite intricate geometry. So this profile changes as it comes down to here. Like that is not a that curve there doesn't continue in that profile like a normal sweep. It's a surface. It's a surface boundary. And essentially the gun's body is modelled and built up through a series of things to get the profile. The trigger was made. I've then moved the trigger out with a move. Forgive me if this video is a bit rushed, but it's just a quick overview of the fact that I use SolidWorks to make this model. I did use folders a bit here, so there was an attempt to a slight attempt to make it somewhat organised. Again, this is not a good example of a SolidWorks model. It is terrible organisation. If anyone else had to pick up my model, if this was done in a real like industrial setting, and one of my colleagues had to pick this up and modify it, they would have an absolute nightmare finding what I did and why I did it, and which feature does what in the model, just because it's so disorganised. It's quite a poor example for SolidWorks modelling, really. I was sort of learning as I went along with this model. It was one of my first sort of real surface modelling models. Yeah, so I've modelled the trigger mechanism to test its movement. I've done a move / copy body. I do this quite a lot on this model, so you can sort of see I've moved it around this point here, which is the actual hinge of the hammer, and that tests whether the hammer can pull back to here, and it does, and it looks right to the sketch pictures that I've got. Again, like I say, this is a very, very messy model. I was just sort of bodging my way through it. I've added screw holes for it, and sort of down here is where I added the offsets. So through the model, features that like slide were modelled size on size. So for example, this is size on size. So if you built that like that in any kind of machine, it's going to be tight as hell, and in a 3D printer it's probably going to close up this gap and it won't even fit at all. You'd be there fettling it with sandpaper or needle files, and it'd be a right pain. So what we do is manufacturing offsets, where basically I made a separate folder, again a little bit of organisation here, where I've just used move face on all sort of the mating faces and create a slight offset. Now that clearance will change depending on what machine you use. So this works pretty damn well for the machines that I use, but I've seen people in my comments saying that it's too tight for them. And basically what it is different machines overbuild in slots differently. Our SLS machines, you could sort of add a 0.15 to 0.2 sort of clearance, which is probably what that is. In fact, let's have a look. Slide, edit feature. 0.1 apparently. But that's good enough for this model. This size on that machine that it was built on, it works, but other machines it might not. So you guys might have to modify the model to be able to build it. Again, there's a whole folder here of move tests, as I call them, where I basically move parts of the gun which do actually move in the real model and check that they can move without hitting things. So if I unsuppress that, you can see that that was me testing that that slides forwards. I've also used a 3D texture on this as the actual surface in the game is knurled. Unfortunately, that didn't really come out as well as I hoped it would in the model. The diameter of this is too small to have a good texture on it. So in the final model, we actually used a smooth variant of that because it just sort of looks strange when it was built. Now in SLS builds, we use this software called Materialize Magics to set up the builds. This is basically industrial grade 3D printing setup software. The level of control in fixing parts in this software is absolutely insane, and perhaps I will do a quick video on that at a later stage, but I've yet to find software that's even close to this in terms of fixing broken files and doing weird little modifications to STLs to sort of make things work properly. And this in the trade is what we use. But basically, after my SolidWorks model was created, I exported it to STL, and it would have been brought into this software to build it. And in Magix you can separate your shells if you don't want to do that in SolidWorks. Shells are basically what SolidWorks calls bodies, Magix calls shells. You'll find different programs call what's essentially the same thing, different names, just to be confusing. But yeah, essentially this is the STL model. Again, you can see all that compound curvature profiles on here. So with the Derringer, that was basically it. It was brought into Magix, and then it was put in a build, it was set up, and it was built, and then painted. I'm not too sure if I have photos of the painting process for the Derringer. Doesn't look like I do. No, I don't have photos of the painting for the Derringer. With the poison bomb, the handle section was actually modelled in Blender. So SolidWorks isn't very good at, obviously in the game the handle is meant to look like a sort of makeshift piece of wood that's been like tied to the model with a strap. And SolidWorks isn't too good at that kind of modelling. So what we did is we modelled it roughly with some of the deep creases like this one here modelled into SolidWorks, and then it was imported into Blender. if I open Blender, I can actually show you that. Oh, I've already got open here. So we basically modelled in the other creases with the crease tool in Blender. It's almost like there's some good tutorials on it, but as you can see, sort of like it's like modelling clay. So it's like bringing this model in from SolidWorks and then modelling it like you would clay, like you push your finger into it and squish it in and make the creases, which is how I made the wood effect. And then again, that was saved out as an STL, and because of it's our day-to-day software, that would have been brought into Materialize Magics, then 3D printed. And let me just bring that in. It's going to take a while because the model's quite big in file size, but yeah, that was brought into Magics. That had been separated out, so these parts were made separately. That's going to take fucking ages to do, but yeah, there we go. Ooh, it's laggy as hell. There we go. So that's the handle. I've actually hollowed it as well in Magics and put some little holes here for the powder to escape out. That's something you have to consider with SLS. If you want it to actually be hollow and light, you have to add holes to get the powder out. Otherwise the unsintered nylon powder will just be in there if it's just hollow without any escape holes. A bit different to FDM in that regards. And my plan was these holes will be in line with the sort of bandage type thing that wraps around the handle. In the real one, that's there. It's a bit more dirty and bloody in the video game one. A bit more weathered than mine. Yeah, and then after it was printed, it will come out of the machine looking like this. Primered it up. The handle was dyed, so that didn't need primering. That's literally the same way clothes are dyed. Used a bit of plastic coat. Not the be all and end all of paints, that, but it did a pretty good job in my opinion. And as for the sort of dark to light effect on the handle that you sort of see in this photo, what we did there is use a spray gun and mixed up a green thing of paint, painted over it, and then put a tiny bit of black in and did a layer sort of around the bottom, and then did another layer and a little bit more black and a little bit more black and a little bit more black, sort of like blend it down to darkness, and that's how we got that effect. If I was to do it again, I'd probably put some more gloss on the top to sort of make it more reflective and look even more glassy, but or maybe even print it in resin in a translucent green colour and actually look like glass. That would be a brilliant use of resin 3D printing.